Congratulations, you have found the Cyberslice, the show where we peel back the curtain on security theater in cybersecurity. Well, we usually make some enemies in the process, and I think this episode is going to be no different, which is perhaps why we're looking a little bit different today. One might say AI generated. Well, we'll find out why later on, but. In the meantime, just let me reintroduce my co-host here, Mr. Robert Pike, founder and CEO of Cyemptive Technologies, the pioneer and, well, really inventor of preemptive cyber defense technology. Now, to clarify, though, you didn't set out, Rob, to be a cybersecurity innovator. You really just wanted to make some money after making a huge amount of money for Microsoft and for Hitachi Systems. You backwards engineered Google, made a great web app, and as soon as people saw what you had done, that's when the hacking started, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's been a very interesting learning curve. At Microsoft, I got to learn the software world, and at Hitachi, I got to learn the software and the hardware world. So it's been an amazing learning experience. Couple of years, obviously there, but leaving them and going into my own company. And working on disruptive innovation is really what excites me the most about things. But one of the things that I realized is the cybersecurity world definitely needed a level of disruption. And so getting into the more detail of what I first invented and what we basically brought together as a solution really started to capture a lot of heat, which then started the wave of the cyber attacks, which then again just started the wave of how do we solve some of the key challenges we were dealing with. Right. So it was very...
Yeah, it was a learning process, and the key thing is that you didn't go out with the idea in mind of being, of developing cybersecurity solutions. You wanted to develop something else, but the cybersecurity problems that resulted in being successful was what drove you to this. And that kind of says a lot about the cybersecurity state of affairs anyway. Everybody's got to spend so much effort and time and money defending themselves, and frankly, with the technology that exists on the market, your IP is generally flowing out the door faster than you can come up with it. And so there's a tremendous economic impact to the rather poor state of cybersecurity right now in the world. And so, the fact Rob's story of how he got into this is of necessity. And essentially what we want to do is make sure that nobody else on their own has to go reinvent the cybersecurity wheel because it's already taken care of. So today on the show, if that kind of sets the stage, we're going to go ahead and make some people mad again, because that's what we like to do here. I'm personally looking forward to it. You, Rob?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, building on the last episode's topic, where we gave a long overdue eulogy to reactive detection-based cybersecurity, may it rest in peace. But now that it's buried, let's go over the autopsy results. And by that, I mean the math that proves conclusively that what most of the cybersecurity industry is selling today is based on solving a problem that is computationally impossible. Rob, so let's pretend you're a vendor at RSA and I'm a customer, and I walk up and I say, hey, look, I know you can't protect me 100%, but can you at least give me, 99% protection?
The reality that I've learned was in all of today's technologies, we can only offer up to 1% protection.
1%?
Absolutely.
Wait. How much are you going to charge me for 1% protection?
It would easily cost $1 million a month.
Have you got something a little bit cheaper? Because that gives me, more than 1%?
So the fundamental part, the fundamental fact of it is we really, that's one of the issues that I realized we had to go solve, right? So the hacks that are taking place are operating, some of them are operating within that 1%, but a lot of them are actually taking place outside of the 1%, which is what most people are not seeing in their networks today. And we're going to go into more detail on that.
Well, all right, so this is what we here at Cyberslice call the 1% problem. And it doesn't automatically ring alarm bells in people's heads. It sounds like we're being crazy and saying that the entire industry, all they're doing is giving you 1% protection. Now, I would submit to you that maybe that 1% contains 99% by volume of the cyber attacks that are happening. But it only takes
or what they're seeing.
or what they're seeing. But let's just give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
But even if that were the case, which it's not, but if that was the case, that really all it takes is one attack to bring your company to its knees, to really could cause a huge amount of damage. We're talking about critical infrastructure, we're talking defense infrastructure, we're talking about the financial system. So does that, even if it's only a fraction of a percent of things by volume, but if it's in that 99% that isn't being covered, that isn't being seen, you'd be concerned about that, right? It doesn't matter. So we talk about 1%. First, I think we have to talk about, 1% of what? And we're talking about APIs.
Totally.
Let's just level set.
Yeah.
What is an API and why is it important to cybersecurity in general?
So to start it off, really it comes down to, it's about the number of code paths and permutation count. So if you look at the total code paths in an operating system today, you really have 6,700 APIs in a Windows operating system and growing, or any Linux operating system not too far up behind that as well. So the actual permutation count is the biggest problem as you see, as you go down that path. So the sequence, when somebody says signatures, what most people don't recognize is the signature, all it really is a API sequence call. And so if you look at a sequence call, file list, file open, file encrypt, file delete, file close, that would be like a sequence of certain types of an attack,
right.
i.e. ransomware type scenario or something
So
similar.
these sequences is when we talk about your virus indications, that you are downloading with your standard Windows updates to update Windows Defender. That's what you're talking about. You're talking virus signatures.
Virus signatures, but then a lot of the vendors keep talking about but we're not doing signature-based detection anymore. We're doing behavioral detection.
Ooh, and what do they usually mean by behavioral detection?
So what they're trying to do is, if there's a sequence of, say, a sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the API list, they're just looking for, okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 24, 5, and trying to figure out, was that a behavioral change to that API list? The biggest problem is you have to monitor all of the APIs, right? And then what is all of the permutations to them, which comes back to the bigger problem here of, if I had only 10 APIs to monitor,
right?
What is the permutation of 10 APIs to the permutation?
Well, Rob's a smart guy, so he's going to do that in his head. He's thinking 10 permutations.
So somewhere around 3,628,800.
Wow, you did it in your head that fast. That's incredible. I tell you, he's very smart, this guy. So now that's for 10. And how many APIs did you say is typical?
6,700 APIs.
Ooh, and as I'm not great at math, but I do seem to remember that permutations, that sort of stuff grows kind of exponentially with the number.
So let's look at 1%, okay? So 6,700, that's roughly 67 to the permutation of 67. Now you're looking at a total of a 95 digit long number. And 95 digit, that's only 1%. Let's look at it a different number. So the total atoms in the universe is a 88-digit number.
Whoa. So the total permutations of all the APIs in today's Windows operating system.
In a single operating system.
It's more possible combinations.
At 1%.
At 1%.
At 1%.
Than the total number of atoms in the visible universe. Not even, wow, we're not talking a galaxy, we're talking a universe.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive. And
yes.
So now thinking about that, going back to our scenario, if you explain that to me, that look, that's why it's going to cost you $1 million to get 1% protection, because that is some significant computational power. And then I say, yeah, well, what's it going to cost me to get...
How many of them are really protecting at 1%?
Yeah.
That's the real question,
right?
So the real test then is, how many signatures do these virus providers provide you with? Go look it up. It's like 10 to 30, 40 million.
Right.
Yeah, that's a long ways away from a 94, 95 digit number.
Yeah.
Right?
So those
realistically,
are important.
Yes.
They're bad, they're important, they're out there, you definitely want them blocked. But there's more of them made every day, so
the bigger challenge is, it's when you turn around and you look at, okay, what is the 6,700 number,
Yeah.
Now you're talking about a 22,000 digit long number.
Ooh.
22,000 digit
digits.
long number of permutations on possible code paths in
Yeah.
a single operating system
Yeah.
that an offensive AI system has the choice to randomly choose any one of those 22,000 possible combinations
Right.
to randomize the detection methodology of what's going on today.
Right. And that is where we get to sometimes you're starting to see talk of predictive type systems that will attempt to predict what the next possible variation of malware is going to be. But you can see that it's virtually mathematically it's almost limitless the number of combinations. And the fact is just because you see it once doesn't mean you will ever see it again.
So this really opens up the scenarios around polymorphic attacks and metamorphic attacks, right? And so just understanding that for a second, you can ask the AI system today to generate me an attack that would be only played once and never replay the same attack twice. Right. So I can completely randomize the APIs and what's being utilized on the attack. That would then mess with any one of those 22,000 digit long numbers. Now, I'm not saying 22,000 potential combinations here. I am talking about a 22,000 digit long number of possibilities.
That's absolutely insane.
Right,
it's a number you can't even conceive of. And in fact, the best computers that we have can't even, they'll run out of math
coprocessor. The CPUs can't
even Rob can't do that math in his head, ladies and gentlemen. So he's tried. He worked on it for a few hours, but smoke started coming out of his ears. It was messy. We had to tell him to stop. That does sound like an intractable problem. And yet, folks, it gets worse because tracking APIs, trying to figure out, hey, is that sequence that's playing out right now in my runtime environment a problem? There's a lot of malware, there's a lot of attacks out there that don't even use. They won't even show up as API calls, right?
So there's something I need to explain to here. So when people say there's a log or there's an event, that is normally an API call, and that's what they're logging. The problem is how many APIs and how many sequence of APIs can they log to or event on? Right. And that is the fundamental problem. You run out of resources very quickly when you go past the 1%. Right. And so really what you can, any type of AI analytics, it's all looking at the events and the logging systems. Right. And they're doing a massive collection trying to figure out what did this machine do or what did this set of machines do, and they're not even getting 1% of what's actually going on in that operating system.
Wow.
So when you look at it from that perspective first, and then you have, let's just say the elites hackers of the world, they're smart enough to not stay within the list of events and logging systems that are being monitored, then you basically end up in a situation where you don't see the problem. Right. So when the problem shows itself, the only thing that's basically being exposed is no events, no logs, yet somehow my system got encrypted or somehow my system had this change of state in the system and nobody understands how it got there, and there's no event of it and the history of it, and there's no reporting on it, and yet why am I in an encrypted state? Right. Don't understand, right? So that's really what's been going on in the industry. It's been going on for a long time, and it's just literally it's a mathematical problem to try and solve. The approach of the detection methodology is broken, and that's what I realized back in 2014, that there is no AI system ever going to be able to trace and track the 22,000 digit long number.
Right. And in terms of predicting it, I mean...
Impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible because if I run a metamorphic attack, means it doesn't play the same code path twice. Right. If I don't ever play the same code path twice, then what are you predicting?
And so essentially every one of those is a new 0 day.
Correct.
And there's this idea that a new 0 day appears, and it goes from being an unknown 0 day to a known 0 day to a CVE and over a period of time.
So
But-
by the time you got to the CVE stage, it's too late.
Right, but the reality is, what you're saying is that we could have a 0-day that is literally played exactly once.
Correct.
Right?
And never play it again.
Or if I push out to 1,000 different computers an attack in a given network, each one of them randomly ends up a different version of the same
core base.
0-day, and they're all different.
Non-reproducible, non-detectable, non-deterministic, non-predictable.
Right. Wow, that is kind of a scary thought, but it does underline why we have reached the practical limit of that sort of detection-based NIST model many years ago. The industry's still plugging along, trying to do a little better every year at something that has long been impossible, remains impossible. And, you know, as much money as you throw at, as many smart people dedicate their careers to doing something, it doesn't change the fact that it's impossible. So maybe we should look for something that's merely difficult, because I think if people understood the math, if they understood what we mean by 1% protection, I think the cybersecurity industry would have a hard time selling much of their products. So basically it's going to get us in a lot of trouble, right?
I agree. I think that's really where we had to look back on why we basically invented the preemptive approach and where we went down the path of. But basically, yes, the industry is in a world of challenges right now because they're all trying to do the same thing over and over and over. Adding predictability to a number that's 22,000 digit long is just, it's not possible.
Right.
And especially with metamorphic attacks, it's more like it's a good luck, you know, it's impossible. It really is. And that's okay because you get stuck on detection. You can't get past that detection methodology with that thinking. So you're never going to be able to handle a metamorphic type attack, which are now becoming a dime a dozen with all this offensive AI stuff.
Well, and on that cheery note, we're going to wrap up today's episode, but please join us next time. We'll be making even more people angry as this goes along, because apparently we enjoy doing that. But it's not just to scare you. This is really, again, the whole point of this series is to shine a light on these issues that the industry isn't talking about. And so that we all, as kind of consumers of cybersecurity products, can raise hell and say, look, you really have to solve this problem. We're tired of ineffective solutions. And some of us have some ideas on how to really solve these problems too. So,
and we really also had to get the world to start thinking differently, because the old way of doing things is just not working. So anyways, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And thank you everybody for paying attention to this. Looking forward to where we go in the next set.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everybody. See you next time.